Hello and welcome to Transforming Tomorrow, a new podcast series from the Pentland Centre for Sustainability in Business here in Lancaster University Management School. I'm Paul Turner.
And I'm Professor Jane Bebbington.
And over the course of this series, we're going to be looking at the work that the Pentland Centre does across the many different aspects of sustainability. And as we'll discover, there are diverse different areas of sustainability that includes.
So in this first podcast, I'm going to introduce myself, but also the Pentland Centre, its history, where it's come from, what it's doing now, and why we exist and what we hope to do in the world.
But first of all, Jan, forget about the centre. Let's talk about you. It's all about you right now. So let's find out a little bit more about you. What's your areas of expertise when it comes to sustainability, and how have you come to be here?
Well, I've come a long way to be here in the Northern Hemisphere. As you can imagine, with an accent like this, I'm from one of three countries. Pick New Zealand and you would be right. I trained as a chartered accountant in New Zealand, and then I quite enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy it enough to keep on doing that. So I moved back into the university sector and discovered that I adore teaching. Right from the outset, I was looking at how accountants can help save the world, I suppose, in a very general sense, but in particular how accounting helps organisations know what they're doing, be able to control and manage them better, and tell other people about what they've done. So right from the outset, I was interested in sustainable development. When I moved to the UK in 1991, I started a PhD in the area while working full-time. The PhD took a very long time to complete, as you can imagine, and I was looking at that intersection between accounting and sustainable development. For a fair bit of the 1990s, we researched absence, why things weren't happening, but from about the mid-1990s onwards, and it's improved and accelerated to the present day, we're now researching things that are going on, helping organisations do better, helping capital markets have more information about things that they ought to worry about with regard to sustainable development. And about a year and a half ago, 2.5 years ago, it's been such a good time, it feels like a short time, I came to Lancaster University to be the director of the Pentland Centre.
And you've been terrorising us here ever since with your work around sustainability. No, it's been a delight working with you, Jan, honestly. I make that sound as if that's the end of our relationship, but no, it has been a delight. So that's how you've got here to work. And I think a lot of people may be surprised when you talk about sustainability and accounting. Accounting and sustainability, they go together? Obviously they do.
Yeah, and I think one of the great tricks that accountants have played on the world is to make their discipline boring. So you never look at it. You never think, well, what would an accountant do? But accounting, along with other management sciences, strategy, organisational work, technology, marketing, all of these disciplines are doing little bits of work within organisations. And the accounting, and I guess accounting bleeds into finance as well, we're interested in how the numbers stack up. And so it's quite a numerical area, as you might imagine, but it's also a deeply social area because how you account for things has effects on how people understand them and what they do. So I would see accounting as a technical practice, but also as a social practice, but then also as an environmental practice as well. Because if you don't count it, it doesn't exist from an accountant's perspective. And so we're increasingly trying to make elements of the natural environment exist so organisations make better decisions.
Which explains how you come to be at a Centre for Sustainability in Business, because, as you say, accountancy runs through everything to do with any business. So let's look at the centre then. The Pentland Centre's been going for 8 years now. Can you tell us a little bit about it and its history?
Well, it was established in 2015, and I'm not the first director, I'm the second director. The first director was Professor Gail Whiteman, and a lot of work was done before I even arrived here, which has similarities and we build on to this day. So I think 3 examples of the work that had gone on in the past is a really good way of introducing the kind of things that we work at. The first one, which was led by Dr. Paul Young, one of the members of the centre, was looking at air quality, and in particular trying to understand that as climate change impacts on cities and settlements, future air quality will also change. And that's really important for policymakers, but also really important for local authorities and government. And it's really important that we don't forget the public sector when it comes to sustainability. Of course, we're sustainability in business, but it's actually sustainability in all sorts of organisations, which would include the public sector. Second example of work from the opening phase of the Pentland Centre is looking at soil and its ability to grow food and how that affects agri-food businesses. So here you've got an environment business connection with the soil being the ecological underpinning to being able to survive and grow food, to make money, to be part of a local community, etc., etc. So already you see some of the principles that we're doing is that there's this like cascading effect and an interlinkage between many elements that lead us into sustainability. The last example is an accounting one, so I can't resist it.
There you go. Accounting, is this going to be a thread through every single episode now, just accounting? Just throw it in here and there.
Yes, I think so. We'll have to go with that. So the third example was working with Nestle, and this is a really good example of how Pentland likes to work with partners who are trying to solve a problem. And that work was looking at something that was very new at that time, which was produced by the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, TCFD. It's a bit of a mouthful, but what it basically means is it's trying to encourage UK businesses to be able to financially quantify the value at risk in their businesses from future climate change. So when that work was done in 2019 to build the capability to do that with Nestle, it was very new. In 2023, all big UK companies have to do it by regulation. So this is the other stream that's coming through from, when the Pentland Centre was established, but also when I started working in sustainable development. Things have become formalised, they're becoming more required and more mainstream.
And I think you've covered that such a diverse range of topics, even in just 3 examples that have been picked out there. The work with Nestle, the work on soils, the work with local government organisations, that all different areas of showing how sustainability applies across the spectrum of business, organisation. Because like you say, local government, it's an organisation. It can be treated like business. It's got employees. It's got people who work for them and contractors and everything. So
exactly,
all across the board there. And I think something you've said there at the end there is really interesting as well. You've talked about how things have become more mainstream in the last 8 years. And over the course of the Pentland Centre's lifespan then, do you see that the work there has become more relevant? Is there an experience of more and more organisations being interested in working on these areas?
Absolutely, and that's both good news and bad news. It's good news because it means that organisations and businesses are worrying about these environmental issues, but also worrying about their social and economic impact. If they're worrying about it, it means they'll be more proactive and they'll be able to do good things. It's not so good news because things have got a lot worse since we started off, and certainly since I came into this field as a young scholar. So the climate is changing quite rapidly, and we're recording this in the Northern Hemisphere summer of 2023, and global boiling has become a new term that I hadn't heard until this summer. I don't ever wish to hear it, but floods and fires and other intensification of weather systems are becoming much more frequent, and it's becoming clearer to people on the street, listeners on this podcast, but then also to businesses and to people who govern businesses, that the actions of business can have either a positive or a negative effect on global climate change. The other thing we're worrying about is unpicking the fabric of life, if you like, all of nature and biodiversity that comes together and provides us with food, provides us with the clothes we're wearing, it provides us with everything that we're using in our lives. So it's profoundly sad, the thought of losing a species, but probably of more importance is losing the resilience and the productivity of that natural system for people and their well-being. So it is definitely becoming more mainstream. As I say, that's good and it's awfully bad as well.
The thing I know about you and a lot of the people who work in the centre is that you realise the importance of not just being all doom and gloom all the time, even if occasionally you tell me the world might explode in 2 years or however you want to refer to it. But the importance of having the positive, proactive attitude of saying there are things we can do, there are actions that we can take from the Pentland Centre's perspective that businesses can take and things that business can do.
Doom and gloom is the greatest enemy to action. And I think hope is a renewable resource. I also think political conviction is a renewable resource. And so I hope that the work of the Pentland Centre, particularly because we are a network of people who are interested in making a difference, and part of my job is to try to energise and uphold that group of people to do that really well, then figuring out, it's a bit of a mess, but we can fix this bit. Okay, we now need to fix the next bit. So just sort of keeping the eye on the prize, which is making things change. On a more gloomy note, because you're not going to get away without a gloomy note, is that as the world, and if the world, I think it's probably as rather than if, as it crashes and has really big dislocation, if we are more resilient and if we are more thoughtful and if we have built the capacity to respond to change, then we're going to do it better. So ultimately, even if we don't avoid really bad environmental problems, we should be better equipped to deal with them, but also better equipped to protect people when that happens as well. So whilst it's got a strong environmental element to sustainable development, at the heart of it is people, humans. The need to be able to make sure people are safe, that they have security, that they have clean water, that they have food. All of those things is absolutely central to sustainable development, because the development bit is all about people.
So you're listening to Transforming Tomorrow, the podcast from the Pentland Centre for Sustainability in Business. And I guess, Jan, we really should discuss, why are we called the Pentland Centre?
So the Pentland Centre basically is made up of 3 essential elements. The first element are its members, whose enthusiasm and expertise drives real-world sustainability impact through their research. And of course, we are supported in that by our excellent advisory board. The second important bit then is the support of university, where sustainability education and research is a central part of their mission, and it's a central part of ours as well. The university is also working to make radical changes to its operations so that it reduces its carbon footprint enormously, but also that it enhances biodiversity. So it's acting to dampen down the negative and increase the positive. But now, to answer your question more specifically, the third element is philanthropic funding. And we get our funding from the Reuben Foundation Charitable Trust, and that foundation is run by the owners of the Pentland Group plc, and hence we get our name, the Pentland Centre. So the Reuben family have very generously funded the centre since its inception in 2015, and it's their gift of both finances but also their personal and professional support and their ability to connect us with wider practice communities that has really allowed us to thrive. Now, our listeners probably don't know the Pentland Group because the name doesn't really tell you much about it, but I guarantee that you would have purchased their goods and you will then recognise who they are. So Pentland are a brand company. That is, they attach brands to the kinds of things that we wear and use in our everyday life. That includes Speedo, Berghaus for the folks who are into the outdoors, Endura, the cycling brand, but then also things like Red or Dead have got really funky shoes, Lacoste, Kickers and other brands as well. So it's that family of brands that are owned by the Pentland Group that are behind our work. Now, just to backtrack a wee bit further again, the Pentland Group originated in Liverpool in 1932, and I have the enormous pleasure of working with the founder's son, Stephen, but also the founder's grandson, Andy. And they and the company itself has a really good vision for positive business. And so their ethos and our ethos fits really well together.
I'm glad you've explained that, because I was really worried that the Pentland Hills had changed location and were now located somewhere just outside the management school rather than up there just outside Edinburgh. Yes. It would have been a big shift in tectonic plates for that time. It
would have indeed. But we're immensely grateful to them, both for the money, because that really does enable all sorts of things to happen, but also for their contacts. So they're very generous in helping us connect with people that we might want to meet that they might know, and also very encouraging of what we do.
Which becomes obvious, we'll discuss in the next episode more about the Sustainable Development Goals, but they are not all purely environmental. There's lots of things in there, such as good work standards, education, gender equality, things in there that people might not always necessarily immediately click that ties in with sustainability, but it does tie in with sustainability in creating that future world where we are more resilient.
And certainly, and this is where the vision of the centre becomes very important. So our vision is a world where businesses understand, act upon, and further sustainable outcomes. Whether that's who they buy things from, who they sell things to, the people and other businesses who are in their environment where they operate, their local communities, their business ecosystems, if you like that phrase. And so that, if you like, is also a deeply economic question. So sustainable development, sometimes people used to say it was a three-legged stool with economic, social and environmental. Increasingly, we're seeing it's still those three things, but the two things we're after is the social and the environmental. The economic is the means by which you get there. And this again makes our work so essential because the design of the economic system is the way we figure out if we can do socially just and ecologically sustainable development.
It so often comes down to the money, doesn't it? I know that some work that was done through the centre in recent years looked at the economic impact of the Arctic permafrost melting and how that was going to cost billions, trillions to the world's economy. And sometimes some organisations, unfortunately, are only going to act if we don't act, we're going to lose loads of money. We're going to take a massive economic hit.
But also it's not just about hits. There's also about opportunity, and this is where I'll leave my gloomy persona behind for this part as well.
I was all in the gloom with you there, Jan. I was in the gloom.
Another piece of work that I've seen from a colleague I used to work with at the University of Birmingham is whether or not the opening up of the Arctic sea ice, which is not a great thing, would allow materials to be shipped across the Arctic Sea rather than coming all the way round, and the amount of energy that would be saved from doing that in terms of the combustion of moving ships around the world. So that's not to say let's melt the sea ice so we have less container traffic, but it does mean that when things change, opportunities also change as well. And I think the organisations I really admire are those that have their eye on both the opportunities and the risks, because both of those things sit together.
So let's look to the future then. We're coming up to 10 years in 2 years' time, a nice 10-year celebration for the Pentland Centre. Let's hope it carries on for years still to come. What's next? What's happening with the Pentland Centre? What kind of areas and work are going to be the focus of the activity for the Pentland Centre?
Well, one of the things, and I know it's just a number, but you have established that I'm an accountant at heart, is that currently we have 99 members, and I'm waiting for the 100th because that will feel like, okay, it's just one more, but it feels different, as you know. So our membership will continue to diversify. So about 80% of our members are the kind of people that you might imagine. They are the people who are doing teaching at the university and doing research. So they're, if you like, the lecturers, the kind of people that have jobs like I've had for all my academic career. But not all of our members are that. We have about a good 15% of our membership are professional services staff. So these are people who are making sure that Lancaster University also operates in line with sustainable development principles. And you, Paul, would be a really good example of that, a communications person, but our ability to communicate and talk about sustainable development rests on your expertise.
For which we should all fear. But no, and I've learned an awful lot from being a member of the centre, from working with people like yourself and all the other academics and the experts that are across the centre with their different areas of research and engagement there. And yeah, it is, and it's good to see that joined up community of academics and what we call here at Lancaster professional services staff, so the people who aren't directly involved in carrying out the research, working together to push the Pentland Centre's work and agenda forward.
The other thing I think we'll see is, the second thing of three, is diversification of members. So, of course, many of our members work in LUMS, the Lancaster University Management School, because it is sustainability in business, the clues in the title. But also we have colleagues from across the university. So we have colleagues from communication and computing. Because, what is the environmental load of computer technology? Somebody looks at that. What kind of ways are we going to run big data big data centres? Could we run them off in renewable energy? We have folk in the Lancaster Environment Centre. Again, more soil science, as you might imagine, but also biodiversity sits within their remit. We have people in the law school looking at how legal requirements are going to change things. But then likewise, we have a really good set of people from the Sunway Business School, which is a partner institution to Lancaster who's based in Malaysia. And the kind of worries and concerns that they have are quite different from the ones that we have, but that enlarges and makes greater our understanding of sustainability. And then the third thing I look forward to is that we're starting to gather together big themes where there's a concentration of people working on them. And some of the themes you'll hear about in future podcasts. So one is business and biodiversity. So podcast number 3, I know, is going to be focusing on that topic. Another one is forced labour and complex supply chains. So one of those social parts of sustainable development, and that's going to be in podcast number 4. We also have a group of people looking at marine social science. So it's people from all sorts of disciplines who are interested in what's happening in the marine space, with quite a focus on ports as being novel organisations that might be able to help us have better sustainability on the oceans. And then from next year, we're going to add a circular economy group as well. Now, this group already exists, and I feel sure that we're going to talk to people on that project in future podcasts, but they're in a big grant process at the moment, and when that finishes up, we want to establish all that learning and build it together and create a circular economy group and specialisation. And of course, everything else as well. So, because they're big themes, but actually it could be anything across whatever our members find meaningful, we will try to support.
And I think it's important to stress here as well that the members aren't contained just within Lancaster University. Duncan Pollard, who we will be speaking to about business and biodiversity, he's got that long career in industry behind him. He's an external member. He's retired, who seems to do more work when he's retired than I do when I'm not retired. What that says about both him and me is, up in the air. But we've got people like him. We've got people up in Scotland at St Andrews who work for the Scottish Government as well. We've got people at Strathclyde. We've got people who work with us as the Centre from External. The CBOS project that you're a part of involves many different members from across Europe. And while CBOS isn't a Pentland-specific project, you're involved with it from the Pentland Centre. So it gives us that network of people that the webs just keep on going out.
I think that maybe comes right back to being a New Zealander. You've got to be friendly in this world because my brain is way too small to do everything we might need to do. And so having good buddies, but not just good buddies, really smart good buddies, is also part of the journey as well. And so one of the ways I will know if I've done my job well is if we attract people that want to talk to our members. And as you say, of course, I'm the centre of my own universe, but I'm not the centre of the Pentland Centre universe. It's our members. And it's those people that are researching, are running the university, who are working in practice and in policy settings, who are making a difference in the world. And my job is to help them keep on doing that and do that well.
That seems to me to be a good area to stop this episode, and we'll be back soon with the second episode where we will be looking at the Sustainable Development Goals, how they tie in with the work that the Pentland Centre's going on. We've discussed a few of the ways in which the Sustainable Development Goals fit in with the Pentland Centre's work already. That will carry on throughout the whole series, but next time we will look at them specifically and how they fit in really well with the Centre.
I look forward to that.
Thank you very much, Jan. So you've been listening to Transforming Tomorrow, a Pentland Centre for Sustainability in Business podcast. I'm Paul Turner.
And I'm Professor Jan Bebbington.
And we'll see you soon.